Hello and welcome to my channel, iWenderlose Gaming. The first limited 5-star male character in Zenless Zone 0, Lighter, has arrived. You'll learn everything you need to know about Lighter in today's ultimate guide video. At first I was confused as to why Lighter buffs both fire and ice teams, but after checking him out, it's very obvious now because he's both hot and cool. Frankly speaking, despite being labeled as a stun class agent, Lighter basically catapults fire and ice teams. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. As usual, we'll go through the entire kit, best drives and stats, WEngines, teams with some bang boos, Mindscapes, showcases, and of course, my opinion on Lighter. So Lighter's kit is really interesting for a couple of reasons. It's really complex on paper, but fortunately ends up being very simple in practice. Lighter's normal attacks have, no joke, 32 lines of multipliers, which ends up mostly being a bunch of fluff. His normal attacks consist of 5 parts, with the first 3 parts dealing physical damage and the 4th and 5th parts dealing fire damage. You can actually do an alternate combo after his B3, known as the follow-up combo, by simply holding a direction at the same time as mashing that basic attack button. And actually, you can just hold the basic attack button to actually perform pretty much all of his basic attack combos. This will cause him to loop through this follow-up combo, which deals mediocre damage in days, and it also deals physical damage throughout. You can also kind of do this to a certain extent with his B5 as well. This brings us to the most important part of his basic attacks, his morale boosted B5. When Lighter has over 80 morale, when he performs his B5, he enters morale state where he performs his morale boosted Ora punches B5 attack, where he can extend the flurry of punches at the cost of morale. Once he runs out of morale, he'll finish it off with the powerful finisher blow. Now, how does he get morale? First, Lighter can have a maximum of 100 morale. Morale is restored passively whether he's on field or off field at a rate of 2.9 morale per second, and 0.26 morale per energy spent by any character on your team. And yes, that does include his teammates spending energy and Lighter spending his own energy. Looking at this chart, we can see that all we really have to do is to use some of his teammates' energy to bring him up to 80 to 100 morale. If you let too little time pass, you need to spend way too much energy, so I found at around 20 to 25 seconds to be the sweet spot. After 20 seconds of passively regenerating 2.9 morale per second, this means we only need to spend a total of 85 energy to reach 80 morale. And if we want to reach 100 morale, it's easier to wait for about 25 seconds and then just spending 106 energy. Anyway, this is the perfect segue to talk about the rest of his core passive. This thing is stacked. To put it as simply as I can, for every 10 morale spent, he increases his impact by 2%, stacking up to 10 times for up to 20% impact for Lighter. Also, his morale boosted punches will lower the enemy's ice and fire resistance by 15%, and his finishing blow will apply collapse, which extends the enemy's stun duration by 3 seconds. And finally, with his additional ability where he needs an attacker or someone from the Sons of Caledon on his team, each morale boosted punch gives a stack of elation, which gives some bonus fire and ice damage to the entire team, stacking up to 20 times for up to 75% fire and ice damage, scaling off of Lighter's impact stat. In other words, if you want to max this buff out, you need 270 or more impact on Lighter to provide the maximum 75% ice and fire bonus damage to the entire team. In summary, when you use his fast and furious flurry of morale boosted punches, Lighter will gain up to 20% impact for himself, extend the enemy's stun duration by 3 seconds, lower the enemy's ice and fire resistance by 15%, and provide the team with up to 75% bonus damage. And if we add in his signature WEngine as well, normal attacks that hit the enemy will also increase ice and fire crit damage against the target by up to 30% at upgrade 1. All of these crazy buffs revolve around his morale boosted basic 5. As such, we want to skip his extremely mediocre physical basic attacks. Fortunately, Lighter has many options to skip those useless basic attacks, starting with his EX specials. After his Shoryuken EX1, he can follow this up with his epic Falcon Knee, aka his B4, and naturally, obviously, he can go into his morale boosted B5 right after B4. The same is the case for his EX2, where he'll follow this up with his B4, thus skipping his B1 through 3. Lighter's quick assist is quite unique as well, as it allows him to skip straight into the Ora portion of his B5, aka his morale boosted B5 combo. Very uniquely, Lighter is able to automatically perform this quick assist by swapping him on field when he has over 80 morale, making it an efficient and effective way for him to get on the field and to immediately start building stacks for his core ability. Lighter's defensive assist is very similar to his quick assist, as after the assist follow-up, Lighter will go straight into his B5 combo. And finally, Lighter's dodge counter will also allow him to skip straight to the B5 combo portion of his basic attack string. As for his ultimate, it's got insanely good days per second, but not much else, so just use it if you need a very quick stun on the enemy. Speaking of days per second, his kit is really interesting. Unsurprisingly, the usual stuff like his EX specials, dodge counter, defensive assist, and assist follow-up all have great days per second. But what really surprised me is that his basic attacks actually don't have as huge of a difference in raw days application as you might expect. However, these raw days multipliers don't account for his core passives up to 20% bonus impact, so there is that to keep in mind. Now, despite how complicated his kit might seem, it ends up actually being extremely simple. Just do any of the following: dodge counter, defensive assist, quick assist, EX special, and literally hold the basic attack button right after that for him to perform his B5. In terms of talent priority, I mostly agree with the game's suggestions, but with one minor difference. Personally, I plan to level his core, EX special, and basics first, and then after that his assists. After that, I personally will level his dodge, and lastly his chain attack. As with the current single ultimate per team system, I'll rarely use his ultimate. But in the future, if multiple characters can use multiple ultimates in a row, his ultimate definitely becomes a higher priority thanks to how much days that it can output. Okay, we've made it to the drives and stats section for Lighter. Let's start off with the drive sets. First of all, just in most situations, just use the 4-piece Shockstar Disco with the 2-piece Swing Jazz. 4-piece Shockstar Disco obviously provides additional days, which, Lighter wants to stun the enemy. And the 2-piece Swing Jazz is good because it provides him a bit of extra energy in order for him to, he synergizes well with energy spent, and his EX specials are extremely great at outputting a lot of days, as well as to help him skip useless parts of his combos. Then we have the 4-piece Shockstar Disco with the 2-piece Woodpecker. You can swap out the 2-piece set for various things, like perhaps the Woodpecker Electro to increase the amount of damage that he does, but let's be completely honest, the amount of damage he does is not very high in terms of a full team setting. So especially, when you just use him as kind of a quick swap stun character, you're not going to be seeing a ton of damage from him. So we have some other supporting options. We have the 4-piece Proto Punk, as well as the 4-piece Swing Jazz and the 4-piece Freedom Blues. All of them are usable, although each kind of with their own, ifs, ands, or buts. With, in my opinion, the 4-piece Proto Punk perhaps being the next most synergistic, although you should definitely run the 2-piece Shockstar Disco with any of these. But the 2-piece Proto Punk, you can come on with a defensive assist, provide 15% more bonus damage to the team, and life is good. 4-piece Swing Jazz, unfortunately his chain attack isn't very good. It's pretty slow, and it also pretty much does nothing. However, obviously still completely usable, because you can still just use his chain attack for the buff. And finally, 4-piece Freedom Blues if you need or want some additional fire application anomaly. And me personally, I'm going to change this a bit. I think the 4-piece Freedom Blues is a bit not as good with him because unfortunately he doesn't quite synergize as well with the current anomaly teams. And you don't necessarily want him applying much more fire anomaly, and Bernice applies plenty of fire anomaly on her own. So yeah, currently a bit more niche, but an option if you do want to increase fire anomaly application. Next, let's talk about Lighter's main stats. This is also pretty straightforward. For slot 6, you just want impact percent. As we can see, if we swap him over to attack percent, we're dropping his buff from 75 to 63. 10% bonus fire and ice damage, which just isn't worth it. And you are also dealing less days for, a tiny bit more damage. All in all, very little reason not to use impact percent in slot 6. Now, slots 4 and 5 are definitely a bit more up for grabs. With slot 5, having attack percent or fire damage, you'll, do like a few percentage points more damage. It's fine. I'm personally going to use attack percent or fire damage, depending on which one has like way better substat rolls, if you even care about that. But honestly, it doesn't matter too much. If you want to maximize this damage though, crit rate plus attack percent is the way to go. And you can also swap him over to the anomaly proficiency with attack percent or fire damage in order to have him help Bernice do slightly larger burn damage. And here's actually kind of a funny take, in my opinion. You can actually slap on HP percent and defense percent on slots 4 and 5. And the reason why this is interesting is because he gets significantly more tanky. And in combination with a point that I actually forgot to mention in the earlier parts of the video, where he gets up to 80% damage reduction during his flurry of punches, this extra tankiness can actually help him survive quite a few hits in the endgame tower mode. In terms of substats, if you really want to squeeze out every bit of damage, you can target crit, attack percent, and for anomaly teams, anomaly proficiency. All right, up next we have Lighter's WEngines, and this is where things actually get a bit more interesting. Obviously, overall, the most recommended is his signature Wengine, the Blazing Laurel. Blazing Laurel will output, overall the highest amount of days. It will maximize his core buff, although do keep in mind that you want to swap him on via his free quick assist when he has 80 morale or more, or you want to swap him in via a defensive assist in order to get the impact percent from this Wengine. And generally both these conditions aren't hard to fulfill with Lighter, as that's how you should be playing him. Now the next best weapon is the Ice Jade Teapot, or Chingy's signature weapon, and hilariously enough, he actually makes full use of this weapon's buffs. And in fact, you could even argue this is even better on certain teams, like for example with Bernice. If you want to maximize Bernice's burn damage, the 20% bonus damage that he provides via the Ice Jade Teapot is actually better than the 30% crit damage that the Blazing Laurel provides. So just like a little funny little tidbit thing here when it comes to his Wengine options, with Chingy's basically being about as good as his own signature Wengine. Now up next, after that, in my opinion, the best option is the Hellfire Gears. You do have to keep in mind that you have to change your rotation a bit. Okay, and this was actually one point that I forgot to mention earlier, but you only need 80 morale with his Blazing Laurel in order to maximize his core buff, because he actually overshoots the 270 impact necessary for the 75%. However, for the Hellfire Gears, not only will you want 100 morale, in order to get the 75% core buff, you also need to use his EX1 and EX2 before you do the Ora punches, which makes the rotation, a bit awkward at times. But still, because of the fact that he can maximize the core buff with relatively not too much opportunity cost, makes the Hellfire Gears, in my opinion, his third best Wengine option. Afterwards, we have the Restrained, which actually outputs a bit more days than the Hellfire Gears, thanks to the very high amounts of bonus days output on basic attacks. However, do keep in mind that it has a lower core buff, and that is why I rank it significantly worse than even the Hellfire Gears. Afterwards, your best completely free-to-play option is the Steam Oven. And from what I experienced, you can generally get 6 stacks, although there are situations where you can actually get him to have 8 stacks on average, making this even a bit better than what I have here on paper. So overall, a pretty solid and decent free-to-play friendly option, and even provides 50% energy regen. And unfortunately, when it comes to the other Wengine options, there's really not much to even consider or to talk about. Pretty much just use the Steam Oven if you don't have any of the options above it. And finally, we have his Mindscapes. Lighter's Mindscapes are interesting because they should actually be evaluated more by how much they buff his teammates' damage over, for example, his own damage. And in this example, I just have a very simple and crude just Ellen's B3 damage, and this is Ellen with her signature Wengine. So if you add a Lighter into it, you will get 3-second stun duration, which this number does not reflect, but it's actually very significant because you will have 3 more seconds to beat up the enemy with the increased stun multiplier, so that's not even included in this bonus damage ratio, by the way. And you also get 58.2% bonus bonus damage on average with the steamed oven, and finally 15% resistance shred, which ends up boosting Ellen's damage to 143.5% of, as if you had no Ellen versus if you do have free-to-play friendly Lighter. Moving on over to Lighter's signature Wenjin, the Blazing Laurel, which not only maximizes the 75% bonus damage buff in his core passive, it also gives him 30% crit damage to Ellen, which increases Ellen's damage up to 64.7%. So if you were to ask me, should you get his sequence 1 or should you get his signature Wenjin, my personal advice is to go for his signature Wenjin instead. Then after that, his Mindscape 1 adds 10 more resistance shred, Mindscape 2 increases the bonus damage multiplier up to 90, and Mindscape 4 provides some energy for Ellen, and by Mindscape 4 U5, Ellen will be doing over twice the amount of damage roughly that she would be without Lighter. Now in terms of Lighter's personal damage, you can see just how much I care about this. I didn't even format the chart, but we do have some calcs here courtesy of Pridewin, so do check them out for updated stuff, because I can't update this video, but they can easily update their website. But we can see here that, by Mindscape 6, Lighter should be doing around 60-ish% more damage than he would be at Mindscape 0. Alright, let's quickly talk about Lighter's teams. Starting off, we have his ice teams as well as his fire teams. Well, he's pretty much just ice and fire. But for the ice teams, one really interesting combination that I personally like a lot is actually Ellen, Lycaon, and Lighter. And the reason for this is because Lycaon provides a ton of buffs, especially buffing damage during the enemy's stun window. And with the two of them, they will be stunning enemies very, very quickly. And thanks to the fact that Lighter also happens to prefer to be more of a quick swappish style of stun character, Lycaon happens to really enjoy being on field to use his charged hold basic attacks, and he likes spending energy with his EX special, therefore actually synergizing really well with Lighter. And I personally found this to be my personal favorite Ellen variant for Lighter Ellen team. Now, of course, there's absolutely no reason why you can't use Lighter as the solo stunner and have Sokaku instead. Sokaku also enjoys spending her energy to get the 3 stacks for her flag thing in order to provide Ellen the buff. And finally, you can even replace, the final slot with Rina, because Rina is a solid support character. Now, on the fire side, we have Soldier, who keeps on getting buffed, honestly. And this is probably what most people are going to be using is Soldier, Lighter, along with Lucy, because now you have a mono fire team making the Infernal Metal even better, and Lighter just provides a ton of buffs for Soldier. And of course, you can always replace Lucy with Caesar. Now, we're getting into some more interesting teams where these teams don't really fully utilize all of Lighter's buffs, but they're still pretty decent. And this is a Bernice Disorder team where Piper's main job is to just trigger the burn disorder for Bernice, because Lighter doesn't really buff Piper's damage in any meaningful way. And we also have over here, you can also, simply use Yanagi as the disorder trigger for Bernice's burn damage. But because disorder is just so powerful, even though these teams don't fully utilize Lighter's buffs, they're still going to be extremely powerful, and they're still going to be able to clear Shiyu 7s and stuff like that with ease, just due to how powerful they are. We've made it to the showcase section of this video, and we're going to start things off with, I guess, spending some energy with Lucy in order to give, Lighter some morale, as well as, I guess I'm just building up some morale by using his EX and then just punching a bunch in order to do this. Now, do keep in mind that this first showcase is a very free-to-play friendly team where there's been some military budget cuts. Now, all the offensive characters get the Starlight Wenjins, and everyone else gets various 4-star Wenjins as well in order to keep the budget a lot lower than having a bunch of 5 stars on everyone. So yeah, very free-to-play friendly Soldier team, and this is great because Soldier feels even better. She just keeps getting better in comparison, and this team can even be improved with Caesar instead of Lucy. So yeah, it's just so hard to put in words like just how much they keep throwing buffs to Soldier, which you love to see. Now she feels like an incredible fire character, especially with Lighter. But yeah, we can see here that just by spending some energy through the rotations, as well as, spending a very reasonable amount of time pairing, doing whatever, Lighter's morale was up, and he was able to, put in a ton of big stun damage or daze multipliers on the enemy. And yeah, also because there are 3 fire on this team, burning uptime is very great for a soldier to take advantage of the 4-piece infernal metal, which gives her a ton of crit rate. And now we just do the usual lighter stuff of smacking the enemies. And also it is important to note that I literally only did one run for each of these teams for this showcase section. Usually I do a couple, maybe 3 even, because that way, we can min-max the rotation a little bit, right? But unfortunately, due to the Genshin media server not being there, I just really didn't have as much time as I would have liked to, play test these teams more. But still, I feel like, honestly, this might be even a bit more relatable because it's mainly us content creators that just spend way too much time like playing the game and min-maxing stuff and rotation and stuff, even when I'm just playing casually, I just don't care, I just slam through the content. But anyway, next team is a lot of fun. It is double the stun, so double the fun. We have both Lycon as well as Lighter, both stunning and supporting for Ellen. You will get some very fast and smooth stuns with this team. And what's really interesting about this, and I should have scissored at the beginning of the fight because now I don't have any flash freeze charges with Ellen, but alas, it is what it is. But anyway, what's really cool about Ellen now, as well as this team, is that we have even more Ice Shred thanks to Lighter, as well as pairing him up with Lycon. This means, I believe off the top of my head, 30% Ice Resistance Shred, as well as capitalizing even more on the extended stun window, with Lycon's increase to the stun multiplier, making attacking an enemy while they're stunned even more effective, giving you longer duration as well as bigger multipliers. So for an attacker like Ellen, who definitely enjoys having the enemy stunned while she attacks, this is an incredible buff, and this is great to see for Ellen. And, will definitely elevate her, and in my opinion, makes her even better of a character. And what's really cool is that she's now better against, like, neutral enemies, because this Shiyu 7 has enemies that are weak to fire and not weak to ice. So this is actually an ice neutral chamber, and Ellen is absolutely shredding thanks to the 30% ice resistance shred, which you absolutely love to see, making her an even better generalized DPS character, more so than most other DPS characters, frankly speaking. Now, one more thing to note about this is that this team is using a 6-cost team and 1 cost per 5-star, although in my opinion, standard banner 5 stars, like for example Lycon, should perhaps just be considered like half, because he's using his signature Wenjin as well, which you just kind of get on accident. You don't really want them, but you get them, although some people do want them. A very few people, well, okay, I'm not sure how many people actually want the signature Wenjins of the standard banner 5 stars, because when you lose to them instead of a character, at least on the standard banner, it probably felt pretty bad. But anyway, I'm yapping way too much about irrelevant stuff. So up next we have a functionally disordered team. I named it this because it's still very functional, because Disorder is just very strong. Bernice is very strong. Jane is very strong. Although, unfortunately, Lighter basically does not provide Jane any buffs except for the 3-second stun window duration extension. And it's also worth keeping in mind that the additional crit damage that Lighter's signature Wenjin provides here doesn't actually help a whole lot for this team, because this team does not rely on crit damage. So yeah, Lighter's not being fully utilized, and I have no idea why am I punching the enemy while it's stunned with Lighter? Oh my goodness, watching this makes my head hurt. I'm ashamed, but like I said, just literally one run. So disordered teams typically take a bit more effort to kind of min-max and bring out the max potential. So yeah, still though, because Bernice as well as Jane are just such strong characters, and they just do a ton of damage, a ton of, when they trigger their assaults and burns and disorders, you're just going to get so much damage. We definitely likely could have single rotation this with Lighter during the stun window, but alas, it is what it is, and this is the run that I ended up with showcasing for you guys. So yeah, I mean, what do I think about Lighter? Lighter is an incredible character, especially for fire and ice teams, and doubly especially so for crit scaling ones if you get his signature Wenjin. And personally, I think he's just going to be the best stun class agent slash almost a pseudo support in a way for fire and ice teams for a very, very long time moving forward. And it's hard to imagine, them replacing him for those elements, at least, especially as a stun roll, for a very, very long time. So yeah, I mean, Lighter feels like a really great character if you want to bring your ice and fire damage teams up to the next level. Let me know what you think about Lighter down in the comments below, and let me know if I missed anything about him. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.